Whether it's the varied zones of Boletaria, the verticality of Lordran, or the gothic-like Yharnam, each Soul game brings their own brand of uniqueness to the table, but they all share a common denominator. Ever since Demon's Souls, these games have been set in a medieval fantasy setting, pulling inspiration from both the West and East. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. The old saying, if it isn't broken, don't fix it, comes to mind. From Software know how to build these worlds, and if we just for the moment throw the level design element out the window here, and base what we're talking about on just the pure aesthetic of the world, the feel of our surroundings as we press on through the game. Not just that, but what kind of world we're in determines the encounters and the equipment we use in our adventure. With Dark Souls 1 we get a real sense of numerous lands being stacked on top of each other. In the initial part of the game we traverse down and the environment gets more and more stingy the lower we go. And as we travel down, it's always made me think of the older cities based in real life. London and Paris, for example, where cities are built on top of each other. This attention to detail brings Lordran to life. But anyway, I'm getting kind of ahead of myself now. The purpose of this discussion is to ask, what if we take the Souls formula directly and stick it in a new setting? Like we mentioned previously, every Souls game has been set thus far in a medieval setting, so what if we take the verticality from Dark Souls 1 and instead of heading down we head up to the stars? In Cradle Games' new title Hellpoint, we've talked about this game briefly in the past and I was a tad critical on it. I briefly sat down with the folks over there at Cradle Games to ask them about Hellpoint. Now unfortunately the audio is very muffled, but that'll be in its own video for another time. But something that people have been asking for is a sci-fi Souls-like, and obviously the Surge was going to be a main contender to fill that void in the market. And although the game was okay, it wasn't pushing boundaries where it had the potential to do so. I don't feel it innovated on the genre enough, but how do you make a sci-fi Souls game? Where the hell do you even start? Well, let's for example take Bloodborne, since it incorporates firearms, and I think that's the most modern-esque thing in a Souls game. But do we just take Bloodborne, slap a paint job on it, give it a few laser weapons and Bob's your uncle? Well, it's not really that simple, is it? Something the Hellpoint developers brought up during our interview, and bear in mind it was my first interview, so it was really interesting getting an inside view on things, and I was extremely nervous. But anyway, they said that in a sci-fi environment, the only limit to their world building is their imagination. It kind of bodes well for the dark fantasy setting as well. Whilst some elements are grounded in reality, others excel in highlighting creativity. I think that's why I was so disappointed with the base game bosses in Dark Souls 2, with the majority of them being humanoid-like. But even with that said, one of the best bosses I feel in Dark Souls 2 is Sir Alone. But again, I'm derailing. When thinking about a From Software sci-fi Souls-like, Jesus Christ, that's hard to say. It gets me excited, but I think that's because I'm painting the perfect picture in my mind. When The Surge was released, it disappointed me because it didn't fit the criteria I'd set for this genre. But it wasn't the game's fault, it was my own. To clarify, I'm a huge music fan. Over the past few years, I've been really getting into the genre of dark synthwave. I love it. So when I think of a sci-fi Souls-like, the first thing that comes to mind is a dystopian future, a bleak world that's controlled by robots with futuristic weapons and gear, added to the fact that there's this heavy dark synth music going on for the bosses, and there's my perfect game. And I feel the Souls formula is a strong foundation to make that a reality. It's probably why I love the game Desync so much. But everyone's ideal of a sci-fi Souls-like game is different. Some people want a sci-fi Souls, yet they don't know why. The question is, what aspects of the existing Souls games would work in that setting, and what wouldn't? Hellpoint is a good start, but it's too early to tell whether it's going to fill that void for me. But even I fall into the category of wanting a sci-fi Souls game but not really knowing why or how it would work. And that's why writing this script was fucking difficult and frustrating, because you know roughly what you'd like to see, but putting your opinions down and trying to find words to describe them was really difficult this time around. Maybe my heart wasn't in it. Maybe I don't want to see a sci-fi Souls game and I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. From Software said they're working on a dark fantasy game that is going to be a Souls-like, so maybe we'll find ourselves in a medieval setting again, stuck in that era. But is that a bad thing? This is From Software's field of speciality, and they do it better than anyone else when it comes to this genre, so why change a system that doesn't need changing? Gleeful curiosity, perhaps? It's not like they haven't dabbled in sci-fi either with the Armored Core franchise, so do we need to venture into the stars for future From Software action RPGs? Or should we just stay in familiar territory? The answer to that question really isn't up to us. We are at the behest of From Software. But moving back onto what I was going on about earlier, the question, what would make a sci-fi Dark Souls? I don't know. But I know it's something I'd want, at least I think I'd want it. The lead up to this E3 is putting me on edge, and this is for a selfish reason, because if From Software are there, I know what I'm going to be covering for the next year. If they're not, well, I don't know how long I can keep talking about this kind of thing. I've been Paragon, take care everyone.